With the inevitable release of 2XKO just around the corner, don't let Riot's closed beta branding fool you. I thought it would be fun to rewind the clock and trace the unlikely story that got us here, because 2XKO did not just pop into existence as Riot's flashy new fighter. Its roots go back almost a decade and a half to a tiny studio with a radical idea about how fighting games could work. This journey isn't just about a single game, it's about a cycle of hype, silence, and surprise. Moments where fans were sure the project had vanished, only for it to roar back louder than before. It's a story of stubborn experimentation, corporate acquisition, community patience, and the slow transformation of a scrappy prototype into one of the most anticipated fighting games in years. So today, we will relive that roller coaster. The reveal of Rising Thunder, the Riot acquisition, the legendary Project L teases, the Arcane-inspired overhaul, and the long march through Alpha Labs. Every announcement, every fade to black, every time the FGC thought the dream was dead. Because if 2XKO has taught us anything, it's that silence does not mean failure. It just means the comeback is going to be even louder. My name is Evan Almighty, and this is the decade-long journey of 2XKO. The story of 2XKO begins long before Riot ever touched the project. Back in 2011 with the creation of Radiant Entertainment, founded by brothers Tom and Tony Cannon. If those names ring a bell, it's because they're already legends in the fighting game community. The founders of EVO and the masterminds behind GGPO, the rollback netcode that would later become the industry standard. From the very beginning, their mission was clear: push fighting games forward, both technically and creatively. After a few years of quiet development, their vision finally saw daylight in July 2015, when they took to the EVO stage to reveal Rising Thunder. The game was bold, free to play, always online, and, most controversially, no motion inputs. Special moves were not hidden behind quarter circles or pretzel motions. Instead, every special attack was mapped to a single button or a simple direction plus button input. To veterans, this was hearsay. To newcomers, it was a revelation. But Rising Thunder was not easy mode. The Cannon brothers argued that difficulty should come from strategy, pressure, spacing, combos, and timing, not from whether you could pull off a dragon punch in the heat of battle. They wanted a game that lowered the barrier of entry without sacrificing the depth that made the genre thrive. The reception was cautiously optimistic. Most players loved the fresh approach, but without official numbers, it's hard to say how large the player base ever was. Anecdotally, the community was small but passionate. Even the first Rising Thunder tournament at the Foundry in September 2015 did not generate much mainstream buzz. Still, patches rolled out, and the experiment felt alive. Then, silence. Months passed with little news, and by early 2016, fans began to worry. In March 2016, the silence finally broke. Riot Games had acquired Radiant Entertainment for an undisclosed sum. The announcement came with a bittersweet twist. Rising Thunder was cancelled, the servers would shut down, and Radiant would begin work on an unannounced project under Riot's wing. For fans of Rising Thunder, it was the end of the dream, but in hindsight, this was just the first chapter of something much bigger. Riot hadn't bought Radiant for nothing. They saw the potential in the Cannon brothers' vision, a vision that would eventually evolve into Project L and finally 2XKO. When Riot acquired Radiant in 2016, the community was left with more questions than answers. Rising Thunder was dead, the servers were shut down, and the Cannon brothers were suddenly under Riot's banner. What exactly were they working on? Why would Riot, best known for League of Legends, want to invest in a small fighting game studio? For 3 long years, we heard nothing. Radiant had vanished into the Riot machine, and the silence was deafening. Fans speculated wildly. Was Riot building a League-inspired fighter? Was Rising Thunder being rebooted? Or was the dream over before it had truly begun? Finally, in August 2019, the curtain lifted at EVO, the very tournament the Cannons themselves had created years earlier. Tom Cannon stepped onto the stage and, for the first time, confirmed what everyone had been hoping for. Riot was making a fighting game. The reveal was brief, less than a minute of footage, but it was enough to ignite the FGC. The game was codenamed Project L, and the teaser showed Jinx vs Katarina and Darius vs Ahri. It looked like a traditional 1v1 2D fighter, with clear visual DNA carried over from Rising Thunder's prototypes. The mechanics were unclear, the roster unknown, but one thing was certain: Riot was not just dabbling, they were in. The announcement electrified the community. Questions flew left and right. What will the systems look like? How big will the roster be? How closely will it tie into League? And perhaps, most importantly, when can we play it? But just as quickly as it appeared, Project L vanished. The teaser ended, hype skyrocketed, and then the devs went dark once again. No trailers, no dev updates, no follow-ups, just silence. For the second time, fans were left hanging, but now the stakes were higher. It was not just a scrappy indie project anymore. This was Riot Games, one of the biggest companies in the industry, and that meant expectations for their mysterious fighter had gone through the roof. 2 years passed with no word on Project L. By late 2021, hope was running thin. Then, out of nowhere, Riot broke the silence, and the timing could not have been more perfect. Arcane, Riot's animated series on Netflix, had just exploded in popularity, putting League's characters in the spotlight like never before. With the whole world suddenly paying attention to Runeterra, the Cannon brothers returned to the stage. In November 2021, Riot released a new developer update video for Project L, and it was immediately clear: this was not the same game we had seen back in 2019. Project L had transformed into a 2v2 tag fighter, designed to capture the feel of League's chaotic team fights within a fighting game framework. The visuals had been completely reworked, sleek, colorful, and undeniably influenced by Arcane's painterly style. The game no longer looked like a Rising Thunder prototype, it looked like a AAA fighter. The team also confirmed some core design choices. Free-to-play model? Check. One-button specials? Still here. Cooldowns on moves? Were gone. They introduced a new fuse system, essentially pre-match loadouts that let players modify how their fighters behave, like a fighting game version of League's summoner spells. Then came the real crowd pleasers: combo footage, Darius smashing opponents with brutal axe swings that applied bleed effects, Echo bending time to reset positions and outwit enemies, tag mechanics that looked more fluid than anything the genre had seen. Complete with couch co-op support, the combination of Riot's network infrastructure and GGPO rollback promised online play that could feel almost local. The update reignited hype in a way few announcements can. Project L was not just still alive, it looked better than anyone had imagined. Twitter threads, Discord debates, and YouTube breakdowns erupted overnight. Some even compared its polish to the likes of Arc System Works, the gold standard of anime fighters. But then, in true Project L fashion, the devs disappeared once again. No release date, no roadmap, no further word. Just one massive info drop, followed by silence. By 2023, it had been nearly 4 years since Project L's original reveal, and 2 years since its Arcane era overhaul. Hype was high, but patience was wearing thin. That's when Riot finally gave fans the moment they'd been looking for: a chance to actually play the game. At EVO 2023, Project L made its public demo debut. The demo featured a fully polished stage, new music, and a shocking roster addition: Yasuo the Unforgiven. Known for his high skill ceiling in League, Yasuo arrived as a complex stance-based fighter with flashy combos that rewarded mastery. Players also got a deeper look at Ahri, who embodied her mischievous mage identity with deceptive projectiles and elegant movement. For the first time, fans were not just speculating, they were playing. Early impressions were glowing, the gameplay was fast, fluid, and expressive. Yasuo felt just as demanding as his League counterpart. Ahri's charm-based pressure and mix of zoning and rushdown gave her a clear, defined identity, and the best part? It was fun. Clips of players trying the game flooded Twitter, while content creators like Sajam and Maximilian praised the mechanics and netcode promise. For many, this was the moment Project L finally became real. Then, just a few months later, Riot returned with another bombshell. In February 2024, a new trailer showed Yasuo slashing through the Project L logo itself, revealing the game's final title, 2XKO. The rename marked a clean break from the prototype years and gave the project its own distinct identity. Alongside the rebrand, Riot revealed a new fighter, Illaoi, the Kraken Priestess. She played like a larger-than-life grappler, creating spectral tentacles that slammed opponents around the screen like a one-woman WrestleMania show. The trailer also highlighted the game's visual polish. Stages were gorgeous, filled with NPCs that looked straight out of Arcane. Backgrounds brimmed with detail. From Zonite machinery to Noxian warriors, Riot was not just making a fighter, they were making a game that felt like a living piece of Runeterra. The announcements reassured fans that Riot was serious about finishing what they'd started. The momentum carried into EVO 2024, where Riot expanded the playable roster. Fans got to try Darius with his brutal axe swings and bleed effects, Echo, a tricky time manipulator full of resets, and Braum, the Freljordian tank who fought alongside his trusty Poros, blocking damage and protecting teammates. Along with Yasuo, Ahri, and Illaoi, this lineup gave the world a true taste of 2XKO's team fighting vision. It was the first time in 2XKO's history that they had the same amount of playable characters that Rising Thunder left off on. The gameplay systems looked solid, the art direction stunning, and the Cannon Brothers' fingerprints were everywhere. Combined with GGPO rollback and Riot's infrastructure, the promise of smooth online play felt real. But then, in true Riot fashion, the cycle repeated. The devs vanished, no timeline, no next steps, no roadmap. Fans were once again left in the dark. Project L was now officially 2XKO, but even with its best showing yet, the silence that followed left everyone wondering, when will we actually play this game? By mid-2024, the community was restless. Riot had shown that 2XKO looked incredible, but people wanted more than trailers. They wanted to play. That chance came in June 2024 when fighting game commentator Sajam was invited to Riot's headquarters to announce something big. 2XKO would be playable at EVO that summer, and even bigger, a closed alpha test in August 2024. The FGC lost its mind. After years of waiting, fans around the world would finally get their hands on Riot's fighter outside of conventions. This first test was called Alpha Lab 1, and it included 6 characters: Darius, Yasuo, Ahri, Echo, Illaoi, and Braum. That roster alone made it the largest playable slice of the game to date, and it gave players a sense of how team synergy would really feel. The response was overwhelmingly positive. The game was fast, flashy, and competitive. Netcode felt smooth thanks to the Cannon Brothers' GGPO rollback integration with Riot's servers. For many, it was validation that 2XKO was not just hype, it was the real deal. But the alpha also sparked a question. If the game already feels this polished, why can't we just play it now? Riot wasn't done experimenting. In April 2025, they ran Alpha Lab 2, a second playtest with significant balance adjustments. Characters were tweaked, systems tuned, and mechanics adjusted. But this time, the feedback was more mixed. Some players felt Riot had overcorrected. Others argued this was just part of the process. The point of alphas is to test extremes, after all. Still, the shift planted a seed of concern. Was Riot second-guessing itself? By EVO 2025, Riot needed to bring back the hype, and they did, revealing not just one but 2 new fighters. Jinx, League's manic gunner, finally entered the fray, bringing her explosive personality and arsenal of weapons to the roster. And then came her sister, Vi, the Piltover Enforcer, a heavy-hitting brawler with gauntlets that could shake the screen. Both reveals tied directly into Arcane's breakout characters, ensuring crossover appeal for fans outside of the FGC. Yet, underneath the cheers, there was tension. The game had been in development for nearly a decade, and every silence between announcements felt longer, heavier. Players wanted more than new trailers. They wanted assurance that the finish line was in sight. Will 2XKO ever enter the hands of players for good? After years of alphas, speculation, and silence, Riot finally made it official. The third and final closed beta for 2XKO would launch in September 2025, except this time, closed was more marketing spin than reality. Unlike the earlier regional alphas, this beta would be global, always online, and permanent. Instead of shutting down after a few days, it would keep growing. New players invited daily. For all intents and purposes, this was no longer just a beta. It was a soft launch, a way to get 2XKO into the world while Riot finalized the last pieces of polish. Every fighter revealed so far, Darius, Yasuo, Ahri, Echo, Illaoi, Braum, Jinx, and Vi, would be playable. Stages looked finished, mechanics felt locked, and the hype cycle had hit its peak. But the stakes had never been higher. By late 2025, the fighting game scene was bracing for a wave of new tag fighters. From Hunter x Hunter, Nen Impact, to Marvel Tokon, to the Invincible Fighter. After 9 years of development, Riot was about to find out whether 2XKO's vision of accessible yet deep team fighting could hold its own in an increasingly crowded field. One thing was clear: the waiting game was over. For the first time since 2015, when Rising Thunder appeared on EVO's stage, fans could finally settle in, learn the game, and grind for the long haul. It is currently August in the year of our Lord 2025. 9 years since Riot acquired Radiant Entertainment, 6 years since the Cannon Brothers first teased Project L, and now, just weeks away from 2XKO's global beta launch. The ride feels surreal. What began as a scrappy indie experiment in simplifying inputs has transformed into one of the most ambitious fighting games ever attempted. Along the way, we've seen hype spikes, long silences, wild speculation, and more trailer breakdowns than anyone can count. Through it all, the community stuck around, waiting, analyzing, dreaming. And now, that patience is about to pay off. 2XKO is not just another entry in the genre. It's a statement. It carries the DNA of Rising Thunder, the polish of Riot Games, the personality of League, and the netcode foundations the Cannon Brothers pioneered. Personally, I've spent nearly a decade following every twist in this story, and it's wild to think that soon, I'll be booting up a client that no one can take offline again. If the past 9 years felt long, they will be nothing compared to the lifetime this game has ahead of it. If you are as excited as I am, stick around, because 2XKO's story is just getting started.